All right, good afternoon, everybody. It is that time of year. Time changes, gets a little cooler. The end of the semester is in view. And all of our batteries start to run down a little bit. Right? How many people are feeling that? I'm definitely feeling it too. Right? So we're in the home stretch of the semester. So a couple of things that I want to talk with you all about today. As we do finish out the semester. So I'm making some arrangements for some more visitors next week and the week after. The week of Thanksgiving, we do not meet on that Wednesday, but I believe we meet the week after Thanksgiving, and that should be our last, I think that's our last time. I'd have to go in and check to make sure. But it's all kind of winding down for us. I'm hoping to get career services in here next week to talk with you all. We still have the project on our curriculum vitas or our resumes. I will have that posted before I leave next week. So, gotta tell you, I'm gonna be gone for 2 weeks. So you will have visitors here. My wife will come in and help do some things. I will pre-record some things, but I'm gonna be in Germany for 2 weeks. I've got a Fulbright fellowship, and I will be there learning about the German higher education system and see what I can bring from that to here. And try to also build some relationships to where maybe in the future you all can go to Germany and spend the semester. So that's part of why I'm going. We are not canceling class. That will continue. I will still be answering things by email, so if you have questions, please reach out. But other than that, nothing will change. So I hope to have career services here next week to talk about CVs and resumes. I will post some stuff. You will have your CV resume assignment that will be posted shortly. The notebook reflection for this week I do not have built into the system yet, but I will have it this afternoon, so it will not come available to you at 4 o'clock like normal. It'll probably be more like 6 or 7 tonight, but it'll be due on Friday just like normal kind of processes, so forgive me for that. And then the week after, I'm going to try to get counseling services in to talk with you all about their stuff that they do, and I'd also like to get the nationally competitive scholarship people over to talk with you about perhaps thinking about applying for something like a Fulbright, or thinking about applying for a Goldwater, or think about applying for a Truman Scholarship. So I hope to get them over here to talk with you about those. I will say that we've been very successful in our major of getting people over the finish line on a number of those nationally competitive scholarships. So I would encourage you all to think about that as well. Any questions about that before I move on? All right. So one of the things that you may have already started receiving notifications about is this so-called thing called Your Take on Teaching. Anybody hear about that yet? It's course evaluations. We've rebranded it as Your Take on Teaching. Can anybody tell me why we might have rebranded it from course evaluations to Your Take on Teaching?
Course evaluation seems kind of accusing.
Okay, yeah. Seems a bit serious and punitive and judgmental, right? But what do we mean by Your Take on Teaching? How does that change the conversation maybe a little bit?
Instead of it being more like professional, it's kind of just our opinion, our like specific experience.
Okay, yeah, we
got out of it.
yeah, that's what we're asking. We're asking for your experience on our teaching, right? And so that here you go. So yeah, that's one of the reasons. Anything else anybody can think of? What do you all think of when you think of course evaluations or Your Take on Teaching?
How do we think that the teacher should maybe change to improve the course?
Okay, course improvements?
Change their strategy to improve the course.
Okay, all right. What else? That can't be the only opinion you all have. Yeah.
Tedious.
Tedious?
Yeah.
Why is it tedious? Because you have to select stuff? Okay, so tedious is certainly there. Anybody fill these out before? Okay, we've actually pared back the number of questions that we ask you now. So to help remove some of that tedious stuff, what else do y'all think about?
I think they're helpful as teachers, if the teachers are like new or looking to change up their classes, they get reviews from students that have actually taken the class.
Okay, what else? Yeah.
Teachers knows how the students perceive them and perceive their class, or what they really think when they walk out the class.
Yeah, we want to know what your take was, right? That's why we changed it. We want to know, how did you perceive the class? We're going to talk a little bit about the questions that you'll be filling out today. Not that I want to give you a preconceived notion of what you should answer, because there is no preconceived notion of what you should answer. You should answer honestly. But what I want to give you is a sense of what we as faculty, how we interpret what you do, okay? And so there's a question that we ask as faculty, and I want to know kind of how you all perceive those questions, and I want to give you kind of an idea. So I would encourage all of you, of course you are not required to complete these at all, but this is your voice. And it is part of the small d democratic system to be able to have a voice. So this is your voice in this. So this is your part of the shared experience that we have at the institution. One of the things that I want you all to remember, I started here in 2004. I was 32 years old, and I was teaching people who were 18, 19, 20, 21. That gap was about 10 years. I'm now 53 years old, and you all are still how old? 18, 19, 20, 21. That gap is bigger, right? When I came to the institution and I started talking about my organic chemistry class, I used demonstrations that more or less myself and the students had in common. So one of the things that I had to teach at the end of one of my courses was protein structure. It's part of organic chemistry. We started talking about amino acids at the end of that. And there's this thing called primary sequence and secondary structure and tertiary structure. And I used, as an example, to demonstrate that, I used the kitchen telephone cord. Anybody know what I'm talking about? So a few of you know what I'm talking about. How many of you ever actually used a kitchen telephone? A few, maybe I have, maybe I've seen it. Back in 2004, everybody had used what I was talking about at least once in their life, right? And it turns out that that long kitchen telephone cord was coiled, and I stretched it out and I said, you know, think of this as the primary structure of a protein. It's just the amino acids all linked together. And then the secondary structure is how that folds on itself, and that was the coil, right? And then that coil got tangled up with itself, and that was the tertiary structure. And if you actually had two of these things next to one another, they started getting coiled up. That's the quaternary structure. I could start making those connections. I can't use that example with you all anymore without actually bringing in a phone and a cord and having you all touch it, because you all don't have that experience, right? And so I'm a year older and you all are still 18 and 19 and 20 years old. But so our gap in experience has gotten further and further apart. When I look at my teaching evaluations, I'm looking for what is it that I can do differently to narrow that gap, right? I'm not going to take you back in time to when I was a kid, obviously. That would be silly to even try, right? It's not necessary. So I have to learn what it is your common experiences are so that I can tap into that to help improve my teaching. That's what I'm looking for in the comments. Okay? Now, you are certainly free to write whatever you want, but if you're wanting to help my teaching for the next group of students, it's those types of things that you need to be telling me about. You know, hey, Dr. Masterson, that thing that you did, we really didn't get it until, or you could have used this as an example, or maybe this would have been a more relevant example. We're all looking for ways in which we can improve, and so keep that in mind as you fill out these sorts of questionnaires about our teaching. So there are multiple parts to each of these questions. This used to be a lot longer. We have worked with students. Student government has helped us with this. The faculty have helped us with this to shrink this down to a more manageable, to make it less tedious and to make it more impactful. But you're going to get a question, and a set of these are called instructor related, and it's indicate your level of agreement with the following statements. Your level of agreement. Each one of you is unique, and you come in with a different experience from my class or from all of your classes. So fill it out appropriately, right? So the instructor delivered course material in a clear manner that facilitated learning. There's two parts to that, right? Delivered course material clearly, that facilitated learning. So it's a two-part thing, right? This is not an opportunity really for you to, I didn't like the instructor, come on, mark everything, disagree, right? Be helpful, right? We want you to be helpful with this, right? And so think about that in terms of the entire course that you've had up to the point that you've completed the course evaluation. Doesn't mean that on a particular day I might have missed the mark, right? But as a whole, did I deliver the course material in a way that helped facilitate your learning about the subject, right? Now this subject is a chemistry class, but is it a test tubes kind of chemistry class? No. So keep that in mind as well. So if you said, we didn't learn any new chemistry, well, that's not the goal of the course. The goal of the course was to introduce you to some history of chemistry and things about being a major, right? And so did I help facilitate your learning in that regard? That's what I'm going to be looking for. The instructor graded me consistently according to the evaluation criteria outlined in the syllabus. You need to go back to the syllabus and look and see, did I, based on the rubrics, the things that I gave you in terms of the, where did I use a rubric? The semester by semester guide. I actually provided that rubric to you, right? Showed you how I was making those evaluations, right? So, what's your opinion on that, right? The instructor was responsive to me, in-person, email exchange, virtual platform, however it was that we communicated, right? So if you've never communicated with me in any of these things, what would be the most appropriate response? Not applicable, and that's okay. You didn't need any help, you didn't ask for anything, no harm, no foul. That's not applicable, right? That would be the most appropriate way to do this. Now, what does it mean to be responsive? What do you all think responsiveness means?
Being able to answer within the day or at the end of next day.
Okay, that's reasonable, right? I usually tell folks that from a faculty perspective, we try to do things within about 48 hours, right? And so that's kind of what I mean by responsive. But is that what you all mean by, if you're emailing me at 9 o'clock at night and you're expecting me to email you within 30 minutes, I might if I happen to be on, but I don't feel obligated to, right? But, within a day or two, I think it's perfectly reasonable for all of your faculty to get back to you. Now, you emailed on a Friday night, and you didn't hear back until Monday morning around noon, 11 or noon or something like that. Is that fair? Yeah, that's probably fair, right? Yeah, we've got to have a personal life too. There's nothing wrong with us having a little time off, right? So just keep that in mind as you're doing it. Again, from your viewpoint of how an instructor is delivering the information. The instructor's lectures, discussion, and/or demonstrations focus on the material outlined in the syllabus. So again, you need to go to the syllabus. What was it that we were going to cover in the class? What was covered in the class, right? Now, does that mean if I said I was going to do something on a Wednesday one week and it turns out we didn't get to it and I moved it to the next week, does that? I wouldn't get too far into that. But, based on that overall kind of thing. The instructor was helpful when I had difficulties or questions. It's going to be different for different classes, right? Not a lot of difficulties in this class, right? At least I don't think so. Or at least I hope not, right? So you're going to probably answer that question differently for this class than you would, say, your Calculus 1 class or your Physics 1 class or your Gen Chem class, where you're covering a lot of in-depth content, right? So again, following through with this, okay?
Aren't these done anonymously?
Huh?
Aren't these done anonymously?
These are anonymous. I cannot trace these back to you as individuals.
So my question is, how are y'all to like conceptually use these if y'all don't know the background of the person who submitted them?
Well, you also get an opportunity to some open-ended stuff. And so we can look at that kind of information and try to make our best guess as to how
I feel like if you knew who submitted it, like it would form a bias.
it will form a bias, yeah. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. And so there's no perfect instrument here, but this is the best that we've got. If you've got suggestions for better, I'd always be open to that. And then the instructor demonstrated the importance of and significance of the subject matter. So one of the things that I want you to know is that faculty think, by and large, because they show up and they lecture, that they're projecting the significance of the subject matter. But that may not be how you're perceiving it, right? And so again, there's a gap. I think it's all cool and interesting, and I think just because I'm talking about it, but I may not be, right? So in areas where I may, or your faculty member, whoever, for whatever course, keep that in mind. Where are these things going to get tricky? What about your labs? Who's listed as teaching your lab?
The assistant.
The TA teaches it, but who's listed as the instructor of record?
Lab coordinator.
Thomas, yeah. So in your Gen Chem class, it's Thomas Owens, Dr. Owens, right? But are you interacting with him very much? No, right? So keep that in mind. So there are instructors of record. I'm the instructor of record for this class. You all are also interacting with me. That's typical in lecture courses. In laboratory courses, it's usually the opposite. So when you're thinking about these questions for a laboratory course, think about it in terms of your TA, right? So if it said, the instructor demonstrated, well, I never saw him. No.
Literally.
Right? Literally, you could say that. But I want you to keep this in mind because it's who you're interacting with in the class. Your laboratory TA is not the instructor of record because they have not yet earned enough credit as a graduate student, graduate credit, to be an official instructor of record. We have rules, right? So I just want you all to understand, your teaching assistant, whether it's in biology, physics, chemistry, whatever the case may be, meets with the instructor of record every week and learns what they need to do to go into the class, into the laboratory and teach you what you need to be taught, okay? They do not yet have enough background knowledge at the graduate level to sit there and go, I think this is what the curriculum needs to be. They haven't earned that yet. They have to have at least 18 graduate credit hours to do that at the institution. Okay, we don't want to just put somebody in unsupervised, just developing willy-nilly whatever for you, who doesn't have enough experience yet, right? And so just to let you know, each one of your TAs, at least in the chemistry ones, have met with Dr. Owens. They've gone over what the laboratory is going to be. He's gone over with them what they need to cover, right? He's helped prepare them. But you need to evaluate them as the teaching assistant on these forms. So it's a little bit different. So always keep that in mind as you're doing this. Okay? So, how do you think a faculty member views these buckets? You can mark strongly agree, you can mark agree, you can mark neutral, you can mark disagree, and strongly disagree, and not applicable. What's the difference between agree and strongly agree?
One's more intense.
One's more intense. I'm a scientist by training. I'm quantitative. I cannot tell you the difference between agree and strongly agree. If you all tell me you agree that I did a great job or I did a horrible job with something, if I am going to take that the same as strongly agree. But there are some faculty who they claim they can parse that out. I want you all to know that from most scientists' perspective, this is one bucket, this is one bucket, and this one is I don't care. I don't really care. didn't pay it any attention, don't have any opinion about it. So I kind of view neutral and not applicable kind of the same, right? You know, I view disagree, strongly disagree, kind of the same, and I view strongly agree and agree, kind of the same, right? That's kind of how I do this. Every faculty member views these differently. Each one of you views these differently. Can anybody tell me the difference between
I mean,
You can make a case for it.
One has the one.
For me, agree is kind of like, I do care, but it wasn't like, it didn't stand out to me, you know? Like the instructor delivered.
Dr. Messerschmidt did okay?
Yeah, like it was just.
He
like,
did fantastic.
Yeah, that's for me. Or like,
Okay.
he could have done better and then he was like terrible for like disagreeing.
So if it's disagree on something, you're like, hey, he could have done better.
It's like,
Strongly disagree, he
it's
sucks.
like a
Yeah.
quality.
All right, I got you.
They have different magnitudes to them.
They have different magnitudes, but they're in the same direction, right?
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
like, have you ever went to the hospital and they ask you on a scale of 1 to 5, how bad is it?
Yeah. So just keep that in mind as you're filling these out, okay? That everybody's going to interpret these a little bit differently. What we hope happens at the university for a person to be a decent teacher is that they do above neutral. We kind of hope that they do above neutral, significantly above neutral, right? We do not expect faculty members every day to knock it out of the park and strongly agree on everything, okay? I want you to understand that. So when an administrator, somebody like myself, although I don't review these, but if, you know, like a school director or a review committee, if your faculty member is doing better than neutral, significantly better than neutral, they usually say they're doing okay in teaching. Okay, I want you just to keep that in mind as you gauge how you answer these types of questions. Okay. You will also have question 2. Please indicate your level of agreement with these questions. Okay? The instructor created an environment that was conducive to learning. What does that mean? That's going to be different for you versus you, right? We all learn a little differently, right? So again, it's your personal opinion on this, and we value that. But did the instructor come in and welcome you? Did the instructor make you feel like you belonged here? Did the instructor create an environment where we can disagree about topics respectfully? Did we, when we worked a problem, if you struggled with it, did you feel like your struggle was appreciated and that you learned something through that? That's creating a good environment, okay? Clear constructive feedback on assignments. Were notes made? Did you get stuff back in a way that you could understand? The instructor encouraged student questions and participation. Did the instructor come in and just read from a PowerPoint and then walk away and never ask for questions, or give time for you all to answer questions, and for them to answer questions, okay? And then, of course, created a course environment that was respectful to a diverse set of viewpoints. Probably not so much of an important question if you're in your Gen Chem class. But in this class, we all had our opportunity to share our opinions, right? Or if you're in your philosophy class, clearly people have different philosophies, different viewpoints, and they should be welcomed, right? And so, again, keep that in mind as you answer those types of questions, okay? Then there are course-related questions, right? And this really gets down to, you know, if you look at it, we're talking about the nuts and bolts of the class. Not so much the instructor, but the instructor obviously has a role here, but we're really talking about the nuts and bolts. So the assignments and examinations, did it reflect the stuff in the course, in the syllabus, right? I'm sure you've all been to a class where it's, where did that assignment come from? I never remember anything in the syllabus saying we were gonna have to do that, right? So again, you're gonna need to reflect back on the syllabus as you answer a lot of these questions. So if a faculty member puts in, we're going to write 60 papers this semester, and they did 60 papers, I'm being extreme on purpose. That's what was said in the syllabus. That's what they did in class. That's reflective of what was in the syllabus. You may not like it, and you may go, I want to strongly disagree with that, just to stick it to them, right? But that's not helpful, right? You could put down in the comments, way too much work for a 2-hour class or whatever, right? You can do that. You're free to do that, right? But again, keeping this in mind. Improve my understanding of concepts and principles in the field. Again, a course like this course really isn't set up to give you principles and concepts across chemistry. It's to help prepare you to be a major in this discipline, right? And so keep that in mind as well. But general chemistry, your general chemistry class, right, it did help do these things, or your organic class, or whatever the case may be. The instructional materials increase my knowledge and skills in the subject matter. This is a place where you have the opportunity to really let us know if these materials are being useful to you. I took a class way back when. I went to the bookstore. This is when you actually had to go to the bookstore and buy real books. And I went and bought real books. I bought like 5 of them for my philosophy class. Didn't use a single one of them. The instructor didn't have them listed in the syllabus. The instructor didn't ask us to read anything out of them. Every time we went to class, she handed out a reading that we did. I kind of felt bad about that. I wish I would have had a question like this. It was a great class. But I was like, why did I spend $30 on these 6 books? Back when books were cheaper.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
that's it? Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
$30 was one. That took me several hours of work. Didn't it? So anyway, there's that. Okay, and then the assignments facilitated my learning, right? And so were those assignments purposeful? Did you understand why you were being asked to do that assignment? Keep that kind of thing in mind. Don't think about it as, I didn't like that assignment, so I'm just going to mark this as bad. But did the assignment have a purpose? Did it have a meaning? Did it ultimately help you in whatever the goals for the particular course were? Okay? So again, multiple pieces to each one of these questions. And then this is a question that you are evaluating yourself. So you've evaluated the instructor, you've evaluated the course, and then we ask you to evaluate yourself. Why is this important?
Because if you never went to class, how can you say the teacher was bad in class?
Okay, how serious do you think we take this question? I take it pretty seriously, but I also take it with a grain of salt too. Because I know we all lie, right? And I know that I've had a class before that was big enough that I could kind of count who was in the class. Smaller than this one, okay? And everybody answered the question. Everybody said they attended class regularly, and I had one student that only showed up to 3 lectures. So I don't know who that student, exactly what they answered, but I know that, I should have had a strongly disagree somewhere there, right, or a disagree, right? And I didn't have any of that. So there's that kind of thing. So this is you being honest with yourself. It helps us analyze the data a little bit, okay, as we go through. And reached out for help when I needed it. So, that's an important thing. We want to know, are students reaching out to faculty when they need help? And when we start to see a lot of students say no to that question, we start to ask things like, are we creating barriers? Are we making ourselves unapproachable? I take that question very seriously. When I see those numbers as aggregated, start to move towards the neutral or disagree, I start to go, am I not friendly enough? Am I not inviting? I mean, what's the problem, right? So we do take these questions seriously, okay? So even though they sound like, oh, they're not really taken seriously, they are taken seriously. So we want that information in there as well. We do want you to kind of, on average, how much time you spend out of class. I use this information in my office all of the time to show student engagement with the work. I don't know that it was you or you or you or you, but I know collectively that chemistry students spend X amount of time outside, or telling us that they spend this much time outside of class, versus students in some other major. And I will tell you that the biggest number of outside time is actually in the arts, not the sciences, because they're performing, they're rehearsing, they're doing music. Students are huge amounts of, dance majors are large amounts of hours outside of class. And so we can kind of use that to help guide us in how we develop our curriculum. So it is useful. So you may never know the result of your answer, but I can assure you that it is taken seriously. We ask you to kind of estimate what grade you will receive in the course. Now, we use this for both graduate and undergraduate students, so that's why we have A plus, A, and A minus. You all will never get an A plus, or A minus in a class. You will just get an A, or a B, or a C, or a D, or an F, or a incomplete. You can do pass, no pass. At the undergraduate level, we do not use pluses and minuses. So just keep that in mind. If you think you're going to get an A in the class, just check that one. Okay? If you think you're going to whatever. All right? So keep that in mind. Now, here comes the questions where you can freely type whatever you want. Okay? You can type in A. You can do that if you so desire. This is your chance to provide your candid assessment of some things to the instructor. But we do ask you to keep it within the context of the question, and we break it up into 2 questions. This is also where I will tell you, you can also blow your identity. Be careful how you type. Be careful not to put your name in there unless you want the instructor to know. Right? I've had students do that. That's fine. You can do that, but then you can't come to me and say, how did you know? Well, I know because you typed your name in there. Kind of know that you said this, right? So be very careful about that, just making sure that you know, if you want to remain anonymous, make sure you keep it anonymous. But the question here is, what are 1 to 3 specific things about this course and or instructor that help support student learning? Parse that question very carefully. This is not a place to just start in about, I hate this curriculum, I don't like this, I don't like there's not enough parking. I literally have seen that. There's not enough parking. I was always late to class because I couldn't park in front of the building. How can the instructor do something about that, right? They can't do anything about it, right? So, keep it to the question, right? So, it's good to kind of think, what do you think after having completed a class, what could they do better in the future to help support your learning? Give 1 to 3 things, okay? Try to get at least one. Nope. Okay. All right. All right. So that's a good one. You can type anything you want there. All right? And some people do. What are 1 to 3 specific things about this course that could be improved to help? So we've broken it up. We want you to comment on what's done well. We want you to comment on what can be improved. Everybody can improve. Okay? Now, how do we need to respond to these questions? People, when they are anonymous and they are behind a computer screen, they are 6 feet tall, they are bulletproof, and there is no such thing as kryptonite. And some people will just let people have it. Do you think anybody takes that seriously?
No.
No. You want to be taken seriously. That I am not saying you cannot be critical. Be critical when appropriate, but also be professional. If you are going to be mean to somebody, this is not the time to be mean to somebody because they will just ignore it. People ignore mean. Okay? We do, however, pay attention as faculty to real constructive criticism that is thoughtful, that will help me be a better teacher next year. We certainly look into that. I can tell you that I've had students, not in my class, hopefully not in this one either, but I have seen student evaluations where the student wrote things like, the teacher was ugly, the teacher smelled. I've seen this stuff. That is just mean. Absolutely mean, and it's uncalled for. It's unprofessional. There have been comments, and now this isn't common. It does happen. But there have been comments that borderline on threatening from students. We take that stuff seriously. Do not do that, please. Okay? Be more professional than that. Okay? And I know you all will. I've interacted with you long enough to know that this is you. I just want you to know it's free form. You can type whatever you want, but think about what it is and what that means. Okay? If we do get a threatening statement, we do have to turn that over to the police. And they do have to follow up on that kind of thing. Okay? And so while the faculty member doesn't know who you are, the system sure does. And there's these things called court orders that can actually release that kind of information.
Right.
And so, don't do that, right? So it's 8 questions long, as we call them questions. Yeah,
Have you ever gotten a threat from one of these?
I have not. I have not personally gotten a threat. Now, are you going to give me one? You going to be the first? No, I have gotten, now, I'll just give you an idea. When I first started teaching, you'll notice I'm out here walking around and talking with you all, right? When I first started teaching, because I never had a speaking intensive class. I never took speech in high school. I was back here and I was talking and I was periodically doing this. And I had a student that responded and said, I really liked your class, I really liked your slides, but I would like to see your face more. Said something to that effect. You know, get out, and so I took that to heart, and I started this, all right? So, maybe it drives some people crazy, maybe it doesn't, but I think it does make it a more interactive approach. I learned from that, I learned something from that. I also had a comment one time where a student had mentioned that my homework, this was when I was teaching organic, that my homework didn't quite connect to the examinations. They felt like they were doing a bunch of homework on things that weren't related to the exams. And in my mind, they were related. But I started thinking about that from a student perspective, and I started asking some students in the next semester, you know, what could I do? Obviously, I wasn't going to just take the homework questions and put into the, so I started actually in my question referencing the textbook a little bit to where they could understand, oh, this is where this question is coming from. And I kind of scaffolded it that way. Turned out to be a very helpful thing. In fact, I actually saw the exam scores increase a little bit. So again, that was student feedback that I took, helped to improve my teaching. I can also tell you that there were some funny comments that I don't know where they came from. You know, I had one student one time said that I think they were just trying to get me somehow because they had put in there that I never showed up to class. And I went, I've never missed a class. But that was, again, just one of those things of, I'm gonna, you know, okay. You know, you're teaching 200 students at that time. I can't make everybody happy, I know that. But I did show up at class every day. Do you think my boss took that seriously? No, because my boss knew I was in class, right? And it was one comment out of however many there was, right? So again, we look at these kind of more holistically. Any questions, comments, or concerns about your take on teaching or course evaluations? How many of you intend to actually complete these for all of your classes? Okay, that's fair. I mean,
All of them.
about all of them, yeah?
Maybe one.
So what is a barrier to you wanting to complete these?
Time consuming.
Time?
Definitely time.
And if you have a teacher that's actually doing pretty well, it's just like, okay, no evaluation needed, even though it's wanted.
Okay, so you're kind of viewing it as I only need to give an evaluation when I think improvements need to be made.
Right.
Okay.
My thought process on that is like, what if that teacher kind of needs some encouragement? You know, like they might be doing everything correctly, but they don't know if they're really getting through to people. So sometimes giving them those words of encouragement can mean a lot to them.
Yeah, we're people too. We like to feel loved. We do. We're human. And we do take our work seriously. I mean, you know, I'm sure there's some out there that you feel don't. But in reality, I don't know of any faculty member who thinks of their teaching as, you know, the lowest thing on their to-do list. And so we do take this seriously, but be thoughtful about it. And also, I want you to know that overall, over time, these things are used in terms of whether or not a person gets an award for teaching. They are used in their promotion and annual evaluations. So it is taken seriously. It is looked at, by more than just the faculty members. So keep that in mind as you complete them as well. All right. Where did I go? There we go. Let's go back. So today I had a couple of reading pieces for you. One was Trust in Science in Chemical and Engineering News. Tell me what you thought about it. Yeah.
I think that the concept of people not trusting in science after it's been proven and proven, like that's what I was talking about, or at least that's what I understood. Sometimes I got confused.
Okay.
Like, the processes that have been taken to get to the science that they're putting out, like, all of these other scientists are trusting it, maybe you don't, but like, there's common people that don't trust it.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I think the reason why a lot of people can be skeptical about the processes of science is that they think trusting in science is the same way you would trust a religion, where in science, the whole point is to not trust it. It's actually to be skeptical
Okay.
and then to then go and try to prove it.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I did like it a lot, but I feel like it didn't add a ton of commentary on it because skepticism is like really, really needed in science. And if you're not skeptical of things that you don't know, you're never gonna bridge the gaps of knowledge that you have. So I feel like it was just acknowledging the fact that skepticism is necessary. And when some people are saying like, oh, why don't you believe the scientist said it? And it's like, because you have little gaps that you need to know before you can fully say with confidence that something's
Yeah.
true.
Absolutely. I think it's so important that we understand that there needs to be a healthy skepticism. And as scientists, when we communicate the value of science, I don't think we do enough to include that piece in there. So if I confront somebody, let's just use the example of anti-vaccine. Okay, so I've actually interacted with people who are in that boat. Some of you may be in that boat. We don't need to get into that right now. But what I talk to them about is it's okay to be skeptical about the COVID-19 vaccine. Let's talk about what we know. And let's acknowledge what we don't know. We do not know that in 20 years what the potential impacts of the COVID-19 vaccine will be. We do not know that. We cannot know that. But what I do know is that there has never been a vaccine in history that's had as much clinical trial as this one has. I also know how messenger RNA works. I also know that it gets incorporated into a small number of cells and generates a piece of a protein that is on the cell surface that elicits a response from the immune system. I also know that it is not long lasting because I have to keep getting a booster. I know a number of things about this, but I completely acknowledge to those folks, I do not know what might be the ramifications for that vaccine 20 years out. I do know that there are people alive today because we did administer the vaccine. We know that, and I could go down those paths. And it is okay to have a healthy level of skepticism. When does that become problematic?
And they start questioning everything, even things that have been proven beyond a doubt.
And what should we do as scientists?
Investigate.
Investigate? Okay.
When skepticism turns into flat out denial,
Flat out denial? Okay.
complete rejection
Complete rejection regardless of the facts.
of the data.
Regardless of what the data tells me. This just cannot be, right? Okay. Can we prove something beyond a shadow of a doubt? Very difficult to do. In fact, I usually say no, right? But I can build a case for something that is very, very compelling, and all of the data seems to point towards an understanding. Does that mean that we could run an experiment tomorrow that all of a sudden shows that we're, in 20 years, we're gonna have a third arm? It's possible, right? But I have no reason to believe that right now, right? All of the data that we have, all of the careful controls that we have, all of this suggests very strongly that this is safe and effective. But a certain amount of healthy skepticism is perfectly fine, right? And I think as scientists, sometimes we mock people who are skeptical, and I think that's to our detriment, and I think we should be more open to that and more welcoming of that. But also understanding that that does not mean that we start altering our facts just to get somebody off our back about it, right? Facts are facts. And if you doubt them, here's my experiment, here's how we did it, you go reproduce it. Happy for you to go do that. That is the scientific method, and the scientific method does have a certain level of healthy skepticism built into it. What else do you want to take from this particular reading?
I feel like communities are skeptical simply because, I've come from like an ordinary person to like trying to be a chemist, and it's definitely a gap of understanding that you have to have in order to understand what's going on. A lot of people like to think about, oh, well, grandma said this or grandpa said this, but that's not technically science. So without that gap of information that you're missing, it's easy to be skeptical about it.
Okay. I also share this with you, number one, because it ties into the scientific method that we've been talking about all semester. But it's also a career path for some of you, perhaps. If you end up being one of the individuals who likes the idea of science and likes the broadness of science and talking about science in general, and when you walk into a lab, you go, ugh. This is something you can do. You can actually be a science advocate. You can be a science journalist. It's actually a field, right? You can take your degree in chemistry or whatever science. You can take your love of writing, your love of the arts, whatever, and you can actually do both in a way that helps promote science in the way that it needs to be promoted, with a little bit of skepticism, right? But a lot of times, people who write about science write from a very biased point of view. We're all humans, right? We all have our biases, right? And so, of course, when I sit down and write about organic chemistry, it's going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. When Samuel writes about it, he's not going to write about it as if it's the best thing since sliced bread. I know because I've read his stuff on the assignments, right? So you like inorganic chemistry, and they're perfectly fine, right? And so we all have those points of view, if you will, and but we need to be open to other points of view as well. So for today, on your note card, put your name. And what I want you to do is we're going to write a piece in our departmental newsletter, our chemistry newsletter, about the block party last week. And so if there's something you would like to share that you liked about the block party that might end up in that piece, we would quote you on it. So feel free to write whatever you want, what you liked, what you'd like to see more of, whatever the case may be. Would love to know something from you to put in that newsletter piece. And when you're done with that, you are free to head out. And I will see you the week after Thanksgiving.